All right. Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, before I get started, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai Bahashim, Racha HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who taught me this truth and rule well. Peace and blessings unto the hopeful elect, pushing his word throughout the four corners of the earth in truth, righteousness, and sincerity. To you, I say Shalom. This is the brother Yeshaya coming at you again through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai. And this lesson, pretty much going to entitle it, They Only Consult to Cast Him Down, right? And that's pursuant to Psalm 62 and 4, which we'll get that here in a minute. But what I want to touch on is this whole scientific race theory, that Esau is trying to bring back, something that he used back in the past to justify uh, enslaving our people, mainly the southern kingdom, right? The tribe of Judah, the tribe of Benjamin and Levi, right? Pretty much labeling them as being inferior due to their science, but let me read this real quick. This is from the AI overview. It says, scientific race theory against black people is a debunked pseudoscience that historically used flawed and biased research to promote false beliefs of inferiority, prominent during the 18th, 19th, and early 20th centuries. All right, so this was just recent. You see, it says this pseudo scientific ideology was instrumental in justifying and perpetuating systematic racism, slavery, and racial discrimination. Right? That's the reason why, they label y'all, what is it, 3/5 of a man, right? They and as a matter of fact, I think it goes into certain examples, which we'll touch on that. But let me continue reading. It says modern genetic science has thoroughly refuted the biology basis of race, demonstrating that race is a social, political construct rather than a biological one. So it says historical examples and methods. It says historically, scientific racism has been used to justify the subjugation of black people through various false claims and methods. It says polygenism, the idea that different human races were created separately, suggesting that black people and white people were different species. Now, as we understand, in the scriptures that it does talk about how two different nations, will come out of the womb of, was it Rebecca? Let me get that real quick. Let me go to that. It's in Genesis 25. Genesis 25. Yeah, Rebecca. So let me start at 21. Genesis 25 and 21, it says, and Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord was entreated of him, and Rebekah his wife conceived. And the children struggled together within her. And she said, if it be so, why am I thus? Excuse me. And she went to inquire of the Lord Yahweh. And the Lord said unto her, two nations are in thy womb, and two manner of people shall be separate from thy bowels, right? So these are two different nations will come out of this, right? The twins that came out of her womb, they will be separated. You see? So just let me go back. I'll bounce back to the precept here in a minute. But when it says polygenism, the idea that different human races were created separately, suggesting that black people and white people were different species. We're not different species, but we are part of a different race, different nationality. You see? So let me go back and finish it out. Genesis 25 and verse 23. And the Lord said unto her, two nations are in thy womb, and two manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. Right? And we know that the elder was Esau, and the younger was Jacob, right? Because Esau came out first. So, and it says, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger, just showing that Jacob is actually superior to Esau, right? Jacob being the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans, we are superior to Esau being the so-called white man, right? So yeah, the Most High is dealing with a certain people, and the Most High did set Jacob, Israel, to be above the other nations, right? Especially you Edomites, the so-called white people. So let's go back. So this whole, scientific race theory is really Esau trying to use his science, his wine, his lies to try to twist the narrative, trying to make himself be that superior race. You see, but as we understand, let me get this real quick. It's in the book of Job. Um, Salakia. Job 30. Let me see. Shit. Let me start at 1 actually, because um, the whole thing of being cavemen and all this and that Esau likes to push in his through his science is really him. He's really talking about himself, because in the beginning, we all knew, as far as the people, the human race or whatever you want to call it, people knew how to live. People knew, what I'm saying, pretty much they had knowledge of the world around them. You know what I'm saying? They weren't just monkeys or evolved from monkeys. No, that's that's all new. You know what I'm saying? That's all this new shit that Esau is trying to bring out to pretty much come up against the truth. But this is Job 30 and verse 1. It says, "Now they that are younger than I have me in derision." Right, younger than I, talking about Esau. Now, as we read, Esau was the older brother, but pursuant to the heavens, going back to the beginning, the elect, being the first fruits, they were the first people, the first ones created. But in the flesh, whenever came back through Isaac, uh, or yeah, through Isaac, Jacob being the younger and Esau being the first one, the firstborn, right? That's the reason why it says that. But when it says they are younger, it's talking about Esau, right? But it says now they are younger than I have me in derision, right? Because now we're on the bottom and they're on top, pursuant to the curses. Whose fathers I would have disdained to have set with the dogs of my flock, right? And why is that? Because Esau is into all kinds of manner of nasty shit. You know, one being bestiality. But verse 2 it says, "Yea, whereto might the strength of their hands profit me, in whom old age was perished? For want and famine they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness, in the former time desolate and waste." Right? Meaning that this is all, history of these Edomites, of them going into the woods, right? Living inside caves, being a caveman, right? Or a wild man, right? History calls him also a wild man. You can look that up. But verse 4 it says, "Who cut up mallows by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat. They were driven forth from among men. They cried after them as after a thief." Right? Because this man was wicked. You know what I'm saying? He was just everywhere he went. All he did was just cause trouble, and especially in that base state. You already know this man was, looting. You know what I'm saying? Stealing. You know what I'm saying? Raping. The same thing he does now, but on a lower level. But it says, verse 5, "They were driven forth from among men. They cried after them as after a thief, to dwell in the cliffs of the valleys, in caves of the earth, and in the rocks." You see? That was them being in the caves. When you go into, like, like Petra. You can just look up. Let's do it real quick. A quick Google search. Petra. One of the first things you see when you look this up is this. And what does that look like? Roman architecture, American architecture, which is the same thing. America's just Rome all over again. But this is all Edomite infrastructure, you see? And look at that. You see these Edomites there, back in their homeland. But either ways, and even, oh, I gotta show you this too. Right here. This is over there in Georgia, over there in Europe. This is where they stayed. This is where they lived at. That's the reason why they called Caucasian, because they lived up in the Caucasus Mountains. You see? So anyway, let's go back to the precept. Job 30 and verse 8. Slakia, verse 7. Among the bushes they braid. Right? Braid. That goes into them, making them noises, them grunts. You know what I'm saying? Sound like cavemen. Right? And when you're reading the NLT, it says they sound like animals howling among the bushes. You see, huddled together beneath the nettles. You see? So they were cavemen. So whenever Esau pushes that whole caveman theory, it's really them. They're really speaking about themselves. They were in that base state, right? That was that 1,000-year period, and even before that, I believe it was after the Chaldeans. Um, they were pretty much brought down to a lower state. But then again, after Rome fell, they were pretty much pushed into the caves again, right? But let me see. Let me go down. Verse 8. It says, they were children of fools, yea, children of base men. They were viler than the earth. So let me get this word for base. This is Esau, man. This is his legacy. This is his heritage. This is his position. It says, right, it says infamous. But it says, let me see, right here in the Strong's definitions, it says base, infamous. Hold on. Seems like they removed some of the definitions on this. Let me see what the root word says. Yeah, no. Well, let's see what the Webster says. Merriam-Webster says. Well, as a matter of fact, this right here, base, right? From Google Dictionary, it says the lowest part or edge of something, especially the part on which it rests or it is supported. It says a conceptual structure or entity on which something draws or depends. So pretty much the lowest part, right? They're low people. Let me see. Bear with me. Yeah, it's not giving me much. But pretty much, we get the point, right? Esau was a base man, meaning he was a low. He's like the lowest of all the nations. You know. So when we go back to this scientific race theory, he used this to try to portray himself to be above us and the other nations, especially Jacob. You know, he always tries to set himself above Jake because this man can't stand being beneath him because this all goes back to a hatred, stemming back to Esau and Jacob, right? And if you even want to go further back, this all stems back to the serpent in the garden, right? This man was jealous, right? Let me get that. Um, I believe that's in the Apocrypha, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see, where's it at? Bear with me. I'm trying to find this precept. Okay, Wisdom of Solomon 2 and 24. Okay, I was pretty much there. This is Wisdom of Solomon 2 and 24. I start at 23. It says, "For the Most High created man to be immortal," talking about Jake, right? The Israelites. But it says, "The Most High created man to be immortal and made him to be an image of his own eternity. Nevertheless, through envy of the devil came death into the world." You see, I'm talking about that serpent, and envy pretty much he was jealous, at the position that Jake had or that the sons of God had, right? So that's the reason why he did what he did, right? But it says, nevertheless, nevertheless, through envy of the devil came death into the world, and they that do hold of his side do find it, right? So we get that point, and we see it right now. This serpent is still jealous, of the sons of God, Israel, Jake. So what is he doing? He's doing the same thing, right? His envy is driving him to do what he, always been doing, man, right? Bring confusion, spread lies, right? And he's doing this through his you know so-called science, you know. But let me continue reading a little bit more in this. Um, it says cranio, cranio, craniometry and phrenology, the discredited practice of measuring skull size and shape to draw conclusions about intelligence and character. Proponents use this to prove that black people were less intelligent. See, so another thing, right? Esau using, and you saw this in Django, right? Where they opened the skull and they saw the three dots, you know what I'm saying, on the skull, and it was attributed to, servitude, but he mentioned that if it was like a Isaac Newton or whatever, those three dots would be in the location associated with creativity or intelligence or whatever, right? But Esau is using these topics, these points, to point out the fact that he is superior to Jake, right? Let me see. Intelligence testing. Flawed and biased intelligence tests were used to claim the mental inferiority of black people compared to white people, ignoring social factors like poverty, poor housing, and unequal education. Right. So man, this devil, and he's on the run with this again. He's doing the same thing again. Here it is. He pumps. As a matter of fact, let me get this. But he pumps all this uh, all this nonsense into into these Jake communities, drugs, guns, black culture, and then he likes to point the finger and is like, look at them, right? Look how evil they are. Look how wicked they are. Look at them. They're savages, right? But this is Habakkuk 2 and verse 15. Woe unto him that giveth his neighbor drink, that putteth thy bottle to him, and makest him drunken also, that thou mayest look on their nakedness, right? And that's what Esau has done. That drink is going to his wine, right? His philosophies, right? And what is one of the major things that has destroyed Jake? Christianity and black culture. Both things given unto Jake through his oppressor, Esau Edom. See, and this man has created these demons that you see now, and now he wants to point the finger as us being the problem, as us being inferior, being savages, being violent, when really he's the violent one. All he really did was give Jake his culture. Esau gave Jake the Edomite culture. That's really what he gave him. But let me get this. Psalms. I was meaning to get this earlier, but better now than later, or better now than never. Psalm 62 and 4. They only consult to cast him down from his excellency. They delight in lies. They bless with their mouth, but they curse inwardly. Right. That's the only purpose of Esau's MO. That's his MO, to pretty much bring us down from our excellency. Here it is. Jake is in captivity. Jake is in the low position. But even then, you see Jake is superior in all factors. Intellectually, physically, right? Spiritually. In all aspects, Jake is superior than an Edomite. But Esau likes to use his tools, mainly his science, to try to, as it says in the NLT, Psalm 62 and verse 4 in the NLT, they plan to topple me from my high position. So they try to topple us from our position, keep us low, keep us down, right? That's all Esau likes. That's what Esau loves to do, and especially now that Donald Trump is in office, and you see America is falling. Donald Trump has been put up there to try to give these Edomites some hope. You know what I'm saying? Because this society is failing. This is the last hoorah that they got. They understand the kingdom is coming. Their economy is failing. Their country is full of decadence. It's over. So the Esau is trying to pull every trick out of his bag. The last remaining trick that he's got now is try to come after Jake. And really what he's trying to do is come after the truth. But he's using, various points and topics and, to try to pretty much come up against Jake and ultimately this truth. Because Esau knows that he can't do nothing against this truth. Right? He's seeing brothers wake up, brothers repenting, turning back to Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, and it's bothering him. He can't take it no more. You see, he's seeing his kingdom being stripped away. Right? The Most High is putting him into a corner, and just like any dog that's put into a corner, eventually is going to lash out. And we're seeing him lash out right now. And it's just going to get worse, right? Which is why we tell our people to repent and turn back to the Lord, because our protection is going to lie in Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. We see the enemy moving, right? And soon he's going to move in like a flood, as the scripture says. And as a flood comes from all angles, and it tries to overwhelm you and surround you. And he's doing it right now with his words, but also now he's using his ice ages to come down. But like I said, it's just going to amplify. It's going to continue to get worse and worse. Now he's trying to paint Jake as the face of terror. You see? And I'm going to do a video on that too. But let me get another precept. Let me get Zechariah. It's Lakia for my voice. I guess I'm a little bit under the weather. You know, I got little throat problems right now. But anyway, this is Zechariah 11 and verse 4. It says, "Thus saith the Lord, my power, feed the flock of the slaughter." Right, feed the flock. Pretty much to bring them this truth. Right, being the prophets, we were instructed to feed the flock, feed the sheep. Verse 5, "Whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty." Right, and how they hold themselves not guilty? Through shit like that we just got into, man. Scientific race theory. They justify themselves in holding Jake in captivity, and justify themselves in labeling us as being inferior due to their scientific race theory. Right? But it says, verse 5, "Whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty. And they that sell them say, Blessed be the Lord power, for I am rich, and their own shepherds pity them not." You see? And there's another precept too I want to get to back that up. Let's get Psalms 50. And I didn't want to make this too long. I'll probably just bring out this precept and this will be it. This is Psalms 50 and verse 16. It says, "But unto the wicked the Most High saith, What hast thou to declare? What hast thou to do to declare my statutes? Or that thou shouldest take my covenant in thy mouth? Seeing thou hatest instruction and castest my words behind thee, when thou sawest a thief, then thou consentest with him, and hast been partaker with adulterers. Thou givest thy mouth to evil, and thy tongue frameth deceit." Right? And that's what he has done. Right? Lies. Bringing confusion. You know, Job 9:24, right? "The earth is given into the hands of the wicked." Right? "He covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he?" Right? The earth is given into the hands of the wicked, meaning he has power, right, over the earth. Influence. The scriptures talk about also how his tongue walketh through the earth, meaning his influence, his lies, they're being heard, they're being pushed. You see? But it says, verse 20, "Thou sittest and speakest against thy brother, thou slanderest thine own mother's son." Right? Let me get that word for slanderest. That word there is Nathan. And it says to suffer. Let me see, hold on. Slander. frame, right? That's what he likes to do. He likes to frame us in a certain light, right? Paint us in a certain picture. To shoot forth, right? The scriptures talk about how he likes to shoot with his fiery arrows. Let me see. To suffer, to thrust. So yeah, that's pretty much it on that. But he likes to frame us, right? He likes to paint us in a certain light, in a certain picture, right? Pretty much spouting off lies about us in order to be justified in doing what he's planning on doing, and that is to come down upon us, right? Pretty much come down upon Jake, come down upon the tribes, because that's what he's planning. He is on a campaign to try to really dehumanize Jake, and in order for him to, whenever he does come down with his wrath, for him to be justified for it, and to have the backing of the people. You know. Let me see. Let me read this one. Justification for slavery. It says in the United States, scientific racism provided justification for black slavery by framing black people as intellectually and morally inferior. See? And you can read some more on this, you know what I'm saying? I said, you can just type it in, scientific race theory, and you can read more on this. But yeah, that was pretty much it. That was all I had. I pray this lesson was edifying. I'm going to go ahead and close it out by giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rachak, Wadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who taught me this truth and rule well. Peace and blessings unto the hopeful elect, pushing his word throughout the four corners of the earth in truth, righteousness, and sincerity. Until the next time, I'm going to say Shalom, Kwam Yasha Allah.